thanks for dropping by. And yes, that is the funniest looking orchid you've ever seen. That's because it's not, it's a bonsai. Well, it's a coming on bonsai. It's not a proper bonsai yet, it's still in training. But some people have showed an interest in the bonsai. This one's ready to be repotted now. It got missed last year when it should have been done, and it got missed the year before when it should have been done. This little tree's been in this pot about 4 years, maybe even 5. I lost interest in the bonsai for a while because they were outside, and as a hobby, you know, there's 4 or 5 months of the year when there's nothing to do at all, which is not much of a hobby for me. But I'm going to get my interest back in, and I thought some people might be interested in repotting a little bonsai tree and some of the thoughts that go into that. Anyway, bonsai trees, like orchids, need to be firm in their pots, and to achieve that with bonsai, we wire them in. So first job is to cut the wire that's holding it in the pot, and then with any luck it might actually come out. That's my theory. Right, now the theory is if I bend those ends round to the holes, it should just lift out. That's a snail, sorry, it's a dead snail. There is a difference. Now what have we got? There we go. And unfortunately this little tree is going to have to go back in the same pot, which I'm a little bit annoyed about. I thought I had some bonsai pots and I haven't. Now that is an absolute solid lump, and that's a slug, and we don't want slugs either. See, this is the problem with growing things outside. There's another one. They get in through the holes in the bottom of the pot. There's not a lot you can do. But anyway, what we need to do is first of all kill the slug, in case I forget. And where did the other one go? There. Right, that's that bit done. Now, with orchid roots, yeah, we worry about damage. With bonsai roots, sorry, this is my little scratchy thing, yeah. With bonsai roots we don't worry so much. Obviously you don't want to rip them completely to shreds. It's a good time to get the weeds out as well. But the idea is to niggle away with my little scratchy thing to get these roots down to bare roots again. And then we'll have a chat about what we do once we can see the flipping thing. But this has been in the pot too long, so the roots have compacted. Some have died, but there are some growing root tips. Now, why did I want this done now? With our orchids, we wait for our new root growth. It's quite important to get that timing right. Deciduous trees, and this is a deciduous conifer, it's actually a little Japanese larch. With trees, deciduous trees, they work differently. Come the autumn, we get pretty colours on our deciduous trees, don't we? And that is the result of the tree taking back in all of the goodness that's in those green leaves, or in this case, little green rosette needles, yeah? And it takes that goodness right down into the base of the plant where the roots are, and that's where that goodness stays while it's dormant in the winter. Come the spring, the expression, the sap's rising, well, that's what actually happens with deciduous trees come the spring. The sap, i.e. the goodness, the sugars and all that sort of thing, that are down the bottom of the tree, move up into the tree. And that's what triggers the new growths on the branches. As I say, in most cases that would be leaves, but in this case it's little rosette needles. And at that point, the roots aren't doing much. So disturbing them at that time is not so bad. Not so bad at all. I don't see a huge amount of growing root tips on this, but nonetheless, the new root growth starts as the top growth is capable of feeding the tree. So as the leaves open and they can start to photosynthesize, the tree can feed itself again, possibly for the first time in a while. And at that point, when it's got that extra goodness from the top of the tree, it starts to produce its new roots because it's got some spare energy. But there's a gap in between. There's a gap between being dormant, the top growth opening, and the new roots growing. I'm going to give that a bit of a wash off, and then we'll look at getting it in its pot, and then we'll look at about sort of bringing it back. God, what a mess I've made. Because this was wet, because we've had some rain, it's splattered all over my kettle and all over. Oh. More cleaning to do, my favourite chore. Anyway, I'll give that a run under the tap and get the worst of the old media off. It's not quite so important to get every little bit off, it's not, just isn't. But I'll be back when I've given it a bit of clean up and cleaned the pot, and then we'll have a go at reshaping this and bringing it back to looking a bit more like a bonsai rather than what it looks like now, which is a tatty object. I've just remembered why I normally do this out in the garden, because it makes a mess and the bags of the various things that I'm going to use are big. I can't bring them in here. But anyway, I've put my wires in the bottom ready. There's nothing worse than getting your tree all ready and all done and then realise you haven't put your wires in and you've got to do it later. Now this is koyadama. It's a type of grit. Because it's got the word bonsai on the bag, it's twice as expensive as just going and buying normal grit. But years ago I used to spend quite a bit on my bonsai, so I got some. And I've just opened the bag. That's how often I used it. Anyway, I'm just putting some in the bottom for drainage. Some of that will probably fall out the holes, but it doesn't matter. The rest of it's going to get mixed in with this compost. Now this is a mix of ordinary sort of the compost you'd use to pot up things in your garden. Just a normal sort of potting compost. It's got mixed in with it some John Innes number 2, which is a technical term for dirt, quite honestly, but it is a substantial dirt. You know, if you get it wet, it turns into mud, that sort of thing. And then in amongst that, I'm using up some Orchid media that I bought once upon a time that I wouldn't have, once I'd opened the bag, I thought, well, that's not getting anywhere near my orchids. But it'll do okay for my bonsai. It's got some bits of bark in it and a sort of peaty sort of thing. And then I've added in an awful lot of that koyadama. Now they say a good bonsai mix you can hear. Yeah? That's because of the grit in it. Now with our orchids, we do our best never to damage our roots. Trees work different. Every time a root tip's damaged, it will branch, yeah? And in a lot of cases the roots are deliberately trimmed to get a better, smaller root system. So bonsai work differently. There's different thoughts going in there. But at the end of the day, the idea of the grit is that the water goes through and the mix doesn't remain soggy, yeah? So if this gets rained on for days and days and days, the water runs through and out the bottom, because it's got some drainage in the bottom, so that it doesn't get claggy and solid. That's the idea of all the grit in it. And every time little roots come up against a piece of that grit, they'll branch and go round it. So you eventually establish a much better, finer root system. Big chunky tree roots hold the tree in the ground. they don't feed the tree. It's the little tiny fine roots that feed the tree, and the idea is to get as many of them as possible. Now, as with an orchid, there's a front and a back, but with a bonsai that is far more important. And this is not a perfect tree, it's far from it, but it has the basic start to it. Largest branch is the lowest branch. Next largest branch is the next one up. The third branch should be round the back. After that, on my trees, it's a bit of a free-for-all, but that logic should progress upwards. And the first two branches, if possible, should come slightly forward. Yeah? And then you get depth to the tree by having some branches round the back. And my first branch round the back is about ½ an inch out. I could wire it and twist it, but I'm not that particular. So that's where it's going to go, like that. That will be the front. And the first thing is to get enough of this in there to bring it up to the right height. Bonsai stand proud, and the idea is to make a mound so that when I sit the tree on that mound, it sits comfortably, and the base of the tree is going to be at the depth. Now, when I do a bonsai tree, I like a little gap around the edge of the pot. Otherwise, when you water it, the water runs straight off the edge and it doesn't go down in the media. So I like the base of the tree roughly at level with the pot, or slightly above, but not much. And then I can slope the media down and leave a ridge round here where the water can collect, and I don't wash all my media off. Now that's about right. It's central, that's quite important. My two front branches are where I want them. Now the idea is to put some media in, but not too much. The tree hasn't been tied in yet, it's still wobbly, but I will get some in there. Now I've got a little ivory chopstick that I can use to make sure, like we do with our orchids, we make sure there's no air holes. It's a bit different to bonsai because these are outdoor plants. If you've got air holes, what you've just done is create a lovely little home for slugs and snails. If they've got to work hard to get through the soil, they won't bother, they'll go somewhere else. They'll probably just sit on the bottom of your pot annoying you. It's their favourite trick. Okay, I just need to turn that round because I'm right-handed and I need this in my right hand. Otherwise it's not going to work so well. Yeah, I'm definitely remembering why I do this outside. Now the same with our orchids. I'm using a dry mix. Many recommend using a wet mix. If you use a wet mix, you're more likely to get air holes and air pockets. Yeah. And the other thing with the little tiny fine roots that hopefully this tree is going to grow now it's in some new media, need to get into something. There's another saying. Roots don't grow in the soil, they grow in the gaps in the soil. So like our orchids, there's still got to be room for some air. Right, that's enough media now. I'm just going to make sure that's settled. And make sure the tree hasn't misaligned itself. I need the tree very gently sloping forward. Very gently, not tipping, not looking as though it's going to fall over when the wind blows, but just gently leaning forward, and that first section absolutely upright. And then what we do is the wires that we inserted earlier, because we didn't forget, we bring those round over the top of the thick roots, yeah, the ones that can stand the pressure. And then what I do is I twist it a couple of times and then I trim the ends off. Why do I trim the ends off? Because I'm going to do some more twisting and they'll keep catching on things. And then I'm going to get the pliers and really twist. and pull at the same time. So I'm pulling away from the tree and twisting. And what that will do is bite that wire right down on those roots and keep that tree really firm in its pot. Remember, this is going outside. This has got to put up with gales, heavy rain, and it shouldn't move. Same as with our orchids. We don't want the things wobbling around and breaking off the delicate little roots. See, that one wire has actually done the job, but I will put the second one on anyway. That's that. Now, there's loads of twists there. I don't need them all, so I'm going to cut a bit off about there so that it doesn't unravel. And then I just bend that down into the media. And then when I top this up in a minute, you won't be able to see it. Now these two are a little bit more critical, because most of the larger roots were at this side of the tree, not at that side. So to grab hold of those, I need to bring these two wires around the front, because there's more to get hold of there, more to help hold it still. But because I've got a few roots that are visible, which is something we like in bonsai, is a nice... You don't want the base of the tree disappearing into the pot. The idea is to make it look ancient. And if you look at ancient trees, you can see the tops of the big thick roots above the ground. And that's part of the goal, is to get that root base near the trunk showing above the pot. Most bonsai, the first question, when you see a proper bonsai, I mean one that's been grown well, trained from its youth and looked after really well, the first question most people will say is, oh, how old's that tree? And the answer to that is, how old does it look? Because that's the goal, is to make it look like it's been around for centuries, doing its thing. Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Jolly good. Right, now you might think that's the hard bit done, but it isn't. I've now got to make the tree look nice. I'll top it up later. We can now get that out of the way, and hang on, let me just have a bit of a clear up and get ready to do the next bit. Okay, the next bit is trimming the actual tree. Now this hasn't been done for a while, so it's what you would call out of shape. Whoops. Now, like I do with my orchids, I still sterilise my scissors. Now the goal is for each branch to start, and then, like the trunk, the first branches should be larger. But the idea is to get a flat pad, yeah? Not a round ball, well, certainly not on this type of tree anyway. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of crossing branches. So those two are coming off because they are right in my way. Right, now let's look at the one branch at a time. Because the new growth is sprouting, I now know what this tree is going to do next. And the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that little sneaky one right at the back there, because that's not required. You need to see the start of each branch. Now, anything that sticks up or hangs down comes straight off. Yeah? So that one can come off there. That's sticking upwards. And so can that one. Right, now we start looking at getting a shape that looks like that. So it starts wide and gets narrower, but it's flat. That's the idea. And the back branches need to be able to grow. There's another little sneaky one there that can come off. So the back part of this branch, these two little first branches, need to grow bigger, and to give them perspective, some of the ends need to come right back in. They'll spread, not need to worry. Now, has that got a growth on it? Yes, it has. So you can come off because you're crossing. And that's hanging down, so that can come off. So Let's see what I'm doing in this half light. There's another reason for doing stuff outside. The light's better. Right, again, we've got a crossing branch there. Another little sneaky one there underneath. It can come off. Now I've got choices here. I can use this branch or this branch, but I can't use both. And quite honestly, that one has got its lead bud pointing in the right direction and this one hasn't, so we'll take that one back. Each one of these little green growths will be a little rosette, followed by a little branch with rosettes either side as it grows. So as it grows, I get more choices how to trim it. That one can go back to that way. See, when you're looking at alternate buds like this, you can choose the direction of growth that it's going to take by cutting back to the bud that leads in the direction you want. And I want that one to go that way. I want that one to go that way. That one could do with the bud farther back. So I think I'm going to have to actually take that branch off and regenerate that end. That's better. Now coming around here, that one's far too long, so we'll take him into there. This one has got two directions there. That one I want, that one I'm not so sure, but I'll give it a chance to go in both directions and then see what to do later in the year. This one's only got one growth that is of any use to me. That's that one. And that one. And then I've still got this big long thing sticking out here, which unfortunately I think I'm going to have to sacrifice. That's going to fill that gap in. See, I've either got to come out to this bud here, which leaves that quite long. In fact, I'll do that. I mean, there is a chance that the branch could actually fail. So that branch isn't too bad now. I'm quite pleased that that is roughly the shape I want, except for that bit. I think I'm going to take that off. Yep, that's better. Now we come around and look at this one. This is now my second branch. And this branch is a bit behind the others and it's had some dieback. That's something you just have to put up with when you've got things outdoors in the winter. So again, we look for things that are climbing, things that are coming up. And I've got very little on this branch that's sticking up, quite honestly. I think that one, although it's quite a large bit, needs to come right off. Yeah, this branch is, this whole structure of this branch is not as good as I would like. I'm going to take that one back into there. That's last year's growth basically. And if I'd snipped that, it would have branched last year. Lazy Roger. That's what I say. When bonsai get out of shape, it can take a while to bring them back again. You lose options. And the back of this is difficult to know what it's going to do. So some of it I'm just going to have to leave and see where the growth's going to be, because I'm not sure. Not on this particular branch. But I know that lead's too long, so that's going to come back to there. Yeah. The other thing to think about with the tree at this stage is it's pushing all its sap, its sugars, up into the tree to force these growths out. Yeah? If I leave this for too long, I've wasted a lot of that growing bits that I don't want. It's much better to force all that energy into the parts of the tree that I want to keep, not the bits that I'm about to cut off. That's just wasted growth. Now this branch here, unfortunately, I think I might just get away with a bit of growth there. That's dieback, that can come off. So's that and that. Ooh, looks good. In fact, I've got a feeling that whole section's gone. Yep. It's a shame because that leaves a hole in the branch. So now to fill that hole, I've got to choose buds that point in that direction so that it will fill in again. And I haven't got a lot of choices here really. That's about the only one. Hope it grows. That will come out there, that will come out there, that will come out there. And I think, wish I had a bud there. It's like choosing your new growths on an orchid, isn't it? They're never in the place you want them to be. Yeah, that's last year's lead, that can come off, and I think I'm going to take that back to there. Still not sure what to do with that one. I want the direction of growth to come this way really. So I'm going to leave that and see what it does. That one's coming off there. So that's that little branch. Right, it's nearly there now. Just the very top. How tight can I get away with getting this? I need to get this really in tight now, and hopefully it'll shoot out, because it's a strange concept with bonsai. Every tip of every branch, in its mind, it wants to be the apex of the tree. It wants to be the top dog. And to achieve that, the tree generates things called auxins. And the way they work is they're generated by the growing tips on the branches. They're sent back down the branches and they suppress all the other buds. So stop them being vigorous, which allows the tip of the branch to grow well. And you can play that game. You can actually play that game with your tree and actually make it do what you want. And the last one, which has no buds back near the base, so again serves no purpose. Off you come. That's it. I just got to top the pot up a little bit and give it one hell of a good watering, and then wait to see what happens. Wait to see where the vigorous growth is. Some of it will have to be taken back again partway through the year, and some of it will have to be left to allow it to grow. Not happy with that branch. I hope I don't lose that one. That will muck the shape of the tree up completely. So anyway, that's the finished product. The idea is 2 lower branches, slightly downwards, slightly forward, yeah. Then a bit to the rear to give it some depth, which as I said would be better if it was round a bit. And then we start the process again. Now logically that branch should be over there and that branch should be over here, but you can only work with what you've got. Yeah, and then gradually it tapers its way upwards to an apex. Okay, so that's that one done. My maples the buds are just starting to show colour. They start to go pink on maples, which means you know the sap's starting to rise, but then it hasn't pushed enough up for them to be done yet. I wish I could have had a nice pot for that one. Okay, and I'll show this tree again when all the little rosettes open, when it looks more like a tree rather than a stick in a pot. Which is what it looks like now. Okay, not orchids, but I did say when I first started my channel it was Roger's Orchids Plus. The Plus was always going to be my bonsai and my trips out into the wild, looking at our native orchids, looking at wildlife, looking at our native butterflies and dragonflies. That was the plus bit, and so far I've done next to bugger all of my plus bit. This year that changes. I have got trips out planned and all sorts of things to use the plus a little bit more. So it won't be just orchids, there'll be other things, and if you're not interested in them, I really don't mind. You know, it is primarily an orchid channel. Anyway, one little Japanese larch, sort of rejuvenated. I must be blind. So I was a bit sticking up. You always miss a bit, and quite honestly that's a bit too long as well, looking at it from the side, because a bonsai should be viewable from every side, not just from the front. It should still look reasonable whichever way you view it. Nothing should look totally out of balance. There we go then. one little Japanese larch. And top the pot up and give it a flipping good soak. And then that'll be that one done. Thanks for dropping by. As I say, not orchids, but it might be of interest to people. Quite a few people have asked about my bonsai. Whether they wanted that level of detail, I don't know. But you got it anyway. See you next time.